FullTiltPoker.net presents Learn from the Pros.
It is picture perfect, the crew from FullTiltPoker.net, as we continue to learn from the pros. I am Chris Rose, and time once again for our roundtable segment. Once again, the professor, Howard Lederer, joined by four fantastic poker-playing pros. Daniel Negreanu, the ambassador of poker at the Wynn Hotel, among other things, correct?
Right, that would be the poker ambassador.
Is that like being knighted?
Something like that. I embass people, whatever that means. When I find out, I'll let you know.
Thank you. Next to you, a poker icon, Phil Hellmuth. That's how you wanted to be introduced, so, right?
Well, I mean, that's the way Oakley introduces me.
Oh, all right. Way to get it all in there, buddy. Phil Gordon, in addition to your hosting duties on Celebrity Poker, the Little Green Book of No Limit Hold'em. Author.
Yep.
Head away. Get the pen out. Sign one for me.
I will do so.
And can you hear it?
Hello.
The mouth, Mike Matusow.
Yes, how are you doing?
In the last 4 years, you've made 2 final tables in the main event.
Yeah,
one of only 9 players to do that.
Yeah, and I'm sitting with one of the other ones right here.
Chris, the three of these guys were at the same main event final table.
Wow.
2001. It's true.
I am honored. Guys, thank you.
I was actually chip leader with 12 to go in that event. How weird is
Oh,
that?
wait, and
I came 11th.
am the one who busted him.
I can't get into that right now. I do want to talk, though, about our topic of the day, aggression, okay? And I'm curious, are you born an aggressive poker player, or is it a trait that you can learn, Daniel?
Well, I think in general, you are what you can't really change your spots. And if you're aggressive by nature, you're going to be an aggressive poker player. If your demeanor is more conservative, you're generally going to play more conservative.
You know, as important as aggression is in poker nowadays, it is very, very important. But nowadays, there's so many bad players that I've toned my aggression down a little bit, and I think that might be more of the way to go nowadays. So I'm not quite sure.
When did you start adjusting?
At the World Series of Poker main event this year.
Why?
Because I realized that there were so many bad players that are going to give away their chips, so you don't need to play such power poker against them. And I realized it last year at the main event when I got real close. And I think that in a tournament that's structured with a big structure where you got a lot of chips to play with, that's more of the way to go and let them give you their chips.
Yeah, you know, actually both Mike and I did. I mean, he lasted an extra day and a half past me, but you know, I lasted into day 4. I was on the featured TV table a couple of times, and I have definitely noticed, particularly on the TV table, the amateur players, it seems like they're really gunning for the pros, much more than they were a few years back.
You know, a lot of these guys that come to the big events now are coming on, you know, $40 satellites. And they know that they probably don't have a good chance to win, but they want to create that story that they can tell their friends back home.
And
they
there's
come
something
and,
extra
I
going.
bluffed Howard Lederer out of a huge pot. I got my $40 worth.
I was at the television table for 12 hours this year, and I saw the same thing. I mean, the same thing that everybody's saying. I mean, I think that, you know, there's 2 sides to a story. If they bust me with a bad hand, then yeah, sure, I'm likely to berate the play a little bit. But I think people like that. They like the attention. I mean, it's kind of a weird thing. They know I'm going to write a column about it. But also, if they can get away with a bluff, and that one bluff makes television, you know, I mean, all of a sudden they're studs to everybody back home. It's like hitting a drive 400
They're looking for
yards.
validation. You know, they want to know that they can play with the best players in the world and survive and make the great play against the greatest players.
Well, and
there's a
can
reason
certainly-
they want to bluff you.
And they can certainly make it difficult to play. I mean,
Absolutely.
I had a good run at one point, and I went from about 150,000 to 500,000 really fast because a lot of people were trying to make me fold, and I happened to have some good hands. So it's certainly a double-edged sword, but then on the way down, it can feel like, oh my God, I can't play
I think
poker.
what's happened with so many people watching poker on TV, they're seeing all these moves that some of the pros make, so they're trying to emulate them, but they don't quite have the timing down. They don't know when to make these plays.
Right.
So you're seeing a lot of wild and goofy plays, and those plays are often the ones that make him blow a gasket and have the chair flying. It's like, what in the world is this guy doing?
So if that's the case, what advice do you have for the amateur player, the young poker player?
Well, it's almost like when you're watching one of these shows, they should have a little thing at the bottom that says, don't try this at home. You know? Because really, some of these plays
Is that
are
for their benefit or your benefit?
For theirs.
For theirs.
Some of these plays are so sophisticated and take a lot of reading ability. You have to know your opponent to make one of these really sophisticated type plays that, you know, without that kind of knowledge or that experience, they're just kind of in no man's land.
We're looking for that spot to set up that bluff. So, but what they see on TV is, oh, wow, look at the bluff Mike just ran on them. Oh, that's got to work. And so they get in there trying to outplay you every hand. And poker, especially No Limit Hold'em, is not about outplaying people. It's about picking your spots to outplay people and picking your spots to trap people. And that's where your aggression comes in.
The bottom line, when you're talking about an edited down show and you're only seeing these fantastic hands, is, as he's saying, is you're cutting out so many of those mundane, quote-unquote, boring hands. So all you're seeing are these exciting plays. Somebody at home watching thinks, wow, I got to do something drastic. I got to do something great. When meanwhile, the true pros, what they're generally doing, it's the, you know, the old saying, hours of boredom followed by moments
and
of
to
sheer
Daniel's
terror.
point, mundane adds up to a big bluff. But they don't see the mundane.
ground
They don't see
work
the
that goes into
Exactly.
But
They're missing a big part of the equation.
But I would give those amateur players a lot of credit. I am much less comfortable now in that situation than I was a couple years ago. So,
I don't play
you know,
hard
they
against
might be overly aggressive sometimes, and this is where aggressive play, I mean, if you're going to be really passive or really aggressive, you should err on the side of aggressive. It puts all the professional players back on their heels, shaking their head. This is a real challenge. It might be reckless aggression, but in the long run, it's going to frustrate the better player.
The thing is all the pros know play passive versus an aggressive player and look to trap, and play aggressive versus a passive player. Well, now these new amateurs are wild and aggressive, and I've found it to be just patient.
But if
I'd
you
much
don't
rather
hold cards,
face-
if you don't hold cards, you can't beat them.
You'd much rather face,
That's
you know,
a
an anvil
problem.
that you can pound rather than getting pounded back by a hammer.
You can flat
Something
call,
like
and
that.
that just petrifies them.
Right, the anvil being pounded, that's you, and that, I mean, when you're pounding, you're putting the pressure on them to read. When they're putting the pressure on you, every hand you're sitting back in your chair, what do they have? The heat's on you.
You don't
The
want to
chips are
guess.
you.
And remember, you're
Aggressive
never
players
as far ahead as you think you are in No Limit Hold'em.
Well, guys, unfortunately, the heat is on me to get us out of this segment, but I do appreciate the time and the insight. Thank you very much.
To learn, chat, and play with the pros, go where they live. FullTiltPoker.com.